This summer I found a couple of LED grow lights on clearance at Costco and picked them up, and it's getting about time to start my lettuce for the year, so I figured I'd make a couple of stands up for these grow lights. Now I'll do a little better video about them when I start the lettuce and give you a little more information on them, but basically I'm trying to clean up my shop some, and I got a bunch of scrap wood there that I'm going to be using up for these stands that I'm building. I had a lot of walnut left over, small pieces and chunks and stuff like that, so pretty much stand's going to be built out of walnut and ash. So I start preparing some of the pieces and take that cover off my table, so that's been a really good handy thing to have. And I just start cutting some of the wood up to approximate size pieces that I'm going to need. Now, I had a couple of old pipe clamps in my shop that I don't use much. They were some of the old half-inch Jorgensen pipe clamps I decided that I'm going to use for the adjustment feature on this stand. So I needed a couple pieces of wood to go across the top of the lights to mount them. So I started by just cutting a couple pieces of walnut, and here you can see I'm still using that Amana 40-tooth combination blade on the saw for everything, and I really do love that. It's been doing a good job. Get nice clean cuts even in the softer woods like this. So first thing I do is I get the two top cross pieces cut, and there you can see they're just gonna go across the top of the lights. Now I found that there are some mounting screws that mount the lights together, but there are counterboards above the screws that hold it together, and I found that quarter 28 screws actually just screw right in there. They thread right in without a problem. They're the perfect size, so I decided that's how I'm going to mount this unit. And there were 4 on each end of it, so I didn't really need to use 8 screws for it, but I just decided to use them anyway, so just in case one stripped out or I had a problem. So I started by, drilling the holes, and then I went over to the sander, and if you listen, you can hear there's like a bump, 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 bump on the sander, and really not happy the way it just kind of kicks the wood around and stuff as you're sanding, and I'll show you in a little while. It actually was the jet belt that came with the sander. I think it was a defective belt, but so here it is, some more scrap walnut that I had, blocks that I had laying around, and I'm starting to flatten one face on this piece. This is like a 2 1/4 inch thick piece that I had cut off that top that I just made. So first thing you do with any rough lumber is flatten one surface on it, and then go back and square up an edge to that on the joiner. And since I aligned the joiner, I am getting some nice, perfectly, straight edges on the lumber again, so that's a good thing. And I like to do a couple thinner passes on the joiner because sometimes the wood has tension in it and will move a little bit when you first cut that surface off of it. So, I usually do a couple thinner passes and then over to the planer. And you can see I've got some of my equipment moved around from where it was in the shop, and I've got another video started about that I have to finish up to show you what I'm doing with the dust collection and stuff now. But anyhow, it's just preparing this block of wood to be used, and I'm just going to go back and plane the 2 sides parallel to the 2 flattened surfaces. And then back and just slice it up into pieces that I need. And here you can see again that 40-tooth Amana blade, no burning, no nothing. Cuts through this walnut over 2 inches thick and just cuts it like butter. And then I needed on those 2 top pieces that I made, I needed a couple of spots to get the power cords hidden under the board there. So I just put a couple blind slots in there in the router table, and then just a couple holes to get the power cord up out of the center of it. So I'm just drilling a 1-inch hole using a Forstner bit in the center of each piece. So there you can see that's that's how it's going to go on there, and that just mounts to the light, and then the cord comes up, and I had to trim it a little bit with a knife to get it through the 1-inch hole, but that worked out good. Now I need the arm to hang the light off of, so I'm just setting up now, and these are some pieces I cut off of that last block of walnut that are going to be the arms. And it's just a matter of setting up that Craig miter gauge, and that's been good since I got that new pin and stuff for it. So again, you can see that saw does a nice job. And then I'm using that, like I said, I'm using those 1/2-inch pipe clamps, and I'm going to have a piece of 1/2-inch black iron pipe go up and down for the adjustment. So I need a .875 hole to clear that. And then back over to the sander. Now you can hear how smooth the sander is. I actually picked up some belts on eBay. I got 5 belts for $42, I think it was, and these things just have perfect joints. They're much better put together than that jet one was, and it makes a sander a whole different tool. It's really a nice smooth operating tool with these new belts. And there you can see it's really easy to put radiuses on pieces. Here's the belt that came with the jet sander. You can see how there's a lip where they actually overlay. Instead of just joining it edge to edge, they actually overlaid the joint there, and that's what was causing the problem. So, if you have this bumping problem and the stock getting kicked around, I definitely would recommend trying another belt, because this thing really does run smooth once you get a good belt on it. I think it's going to be one of the handiest tools in my shop now, because I used to do all this on a disc sander, and you always had the grain get torn up and a lot of extra sanding, so this just makes it so easy. And then I just need a couple blind grooves in the bottom of these arms to hide the rest of that light cord out to the pipe. I just set up on the router table again with a 1/4-inch bit and cut deep enough for the power cord to hide up in there. And then I had to drill holes to mount that pipe, and it turns out that the only drill bit I had was a .875, and the pipe is only about .85 to .86 in diameter. So what I did is I just took an old spade bit, one of these spade drill bits, and actually I just ground a couple thousandths off each side of it to get it down to the exact size that I need. And it took 2 tries. The first hole there was a little bit too tight yet, and then I finally with the second hole I got it so I could put it in and clamp it, and it worked perfect. So that was an easy way to get the right size hole. And then here you can see the I've got that pipe there, and it turns out that clamp end actually didn't sit exactly 90 degrees to the pipe when you turned it upside down like this. There was a slight taper in it, so I just kind of had to figure out what that taper was and mark it, and then go back and set the table saw up at that angle. And this this 10 jig is really a great thing to have for safety. It really helped with cuts like this. So I was able to just duplicate the angle of the tilt on the clamp and just cut that surface the clamp's going to mount on to match it. And here you can see a little better. You can see how that jig really does a good job of holding and keeping your hands out of the way when you're making cuts like this. So, there it is, kind of just mocked and clamped together right now. You can see kind of what it's going to look like in the end. And you can see these grow lights really have a reddish glow to them too. So now it's time to go back and start the lower stand for the 2 lights. And again, I'm using some more of the scrap walnut that I had previously sized up there, and just kind of trying to cut everything to length. And this is that spade drill that I modified, and now it does drill an exact hole for the size slip fit for the pipe. So that was pretty easy to customize if you ever need an oddball size drill bit. I drilled the hole for the pipe, and then I just went back and I split it on that 10-yin jig again there, so I could clamp the pipe once it was in place, and then I just drilled a couple cross holes for a carriage bolt. And back over this sander, I seem to be getting a lot of use out of it. Doesn't really have the best dust collection set up on it. I have to play a little bit with that to get that a little better. But really, it's a fun to use tool, and you just have to watch out that you have a good grip on the stock when you're sanding it, so it doesn't rip it out of your hands and throw it across the room. But it really does do a great job at blending things together and putting radiuses on. So I got those pieces for the top there, pretty much all machined and ready to be sanded. And you can see this sanding station that I built back a couple months ago really has done a good job at helping me keep the shop clean and keeping not the finest particles out of the air, because those filters don't filter down all that fine, but it keeps the most of the larger particles out of the air, and it always draws the air from behind you when you're sanding, so you don't get that dust in your face. And then I wanted to spray all these parts, but I decided to just brush it on for now, and once it gets warm outside, I'll set up outside and spray, but I really didn't feel like setting up in the shop right now, so I'm just going to brush it on. And I put 2 coats of the polyurethane on there, and just going to start putting it together now, and pretty much see how with that hole, the cord comes up through the hole there, and that slot in the end there is just to wrap the cord around to kind of pull it tight and hide it so it's not hanging off the edge of the light there. And then here goes that arm that comes out. That just bolts onto the cross piece here, and I've already pre-drilled all the holes and stuff to make sure everything's perfectly aligned, so just a matter of putting it together. And I just use some of those Craig pocket hole screws to put it all together. They seem to do a good job, and the threads really grip good in the walnut. So there it is. Those 2 pieces are put together, and then it's just time to mount it on the light. And I had some 1/4-28 bolts that I had laying around, and decided to use them up there. Stainless steel bolts, so they'll never rust or anything. So, and you can see they fit right in those counterbore pockets perfectly on these lights, and they really did work out good for mounting them. And I definitely didn't need 8 of them, but just put them there anyway. So they actually cut their own threads when they go down into plastic. It's funny, when you look in there, you can see the threads cut, and the plastic is just soft enough it doesn't crack or anything. So it did work out really good. And then I just kind of tuck that wire up in that other slot that I had cut, and just a little window clip that I have in there, plastic panel clip that I'm just going to put on there to kind of hold it out of the way. So there are the tops of the 2 light assemblies. Now I needed to go back and drill a couple holes for screws in the clamp half, and these are the old Jorgensen 1/2-inch pipe clamps. So they're made out of cast iron, and they do drill very easy. So I took them apart, I drilled them, and then I actually sanded them down a little bit and just threw a quick coat of spray paint on them. Now I'm going back and starting to work on cutting out the base pieces, and I have that one center piece that holds the pipe, and then I just have 2 outer edges for support. And there's also more scrap walnut that I had laying around, so put on the dado blade and started cutting. And you can see I put a piece of plywood on behind the blade there, because the chips were just coming flying up out of there because I don't have a 0 clearance insert, so that really did help a lot. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of cutting the dado for the 3/4 inch square ash in both ends, and now I'm just going to go back and cut all the other ones at an equal spacing. And all I did is I put a longer fence on that Craig miter gauge, and I actually put just took a screw with a nut, and I just screwed that into the gauge here. You'll see it in a couple of minutes, and I'm just using that to index that up against the flat edge of the nut to keep my spacing the same. See, now I had 6 pieces. There you can see it. You can see the nut screwed onto there. So that makes it easy to keep all 6 pieces pretty much identical. And there you can see there's the other pieces. Kind of like like you make a box joint on a corner, and you just put a block there to index up against. So I had to cut these pieces, and I am kind of a little hoarse yet. I'm just getting over a really bad cold I've had the last week, so sorry about that. But there they are. There's all 6 pieces. Just cut, and it's back over to the sander to just break some edges and do a little bit of edge sanding on them and stuff. And I really should have bought this machine a long time ago, I think. So, and you can see with these belts, it really does a good job. Then I had some 3/4 inch thick scrap ash that I'm cutting these slats out of. So that's just, just ripping some 3/4 inch square blocks out of them. Pretty amazing how many small scrap pieces you build up in the shop over the course of a year. Every year I kind of go through and clean out, and there they are, pretty much set together, and just made sure everything fit perfect. And then I went back, and this is just trimming those slats to all be the exact size. And then it's back over to the edge sander again to put some radiuses on and break some corners and stuff. So that as I said before, it really does do a good job, and you can really see good what you're doing, and the table is a real nice flat table that helps keep everything parallel and perpendicular when you're doing it. So there are all the parts for the 2 bases, and it's time to start assembly. Now I decided to just glue them all up, and turned into a 15-minute job by the time I was done. I started by gluing all the slats into that center piece there, and I had to go back and mark everything good to get the alignment on it right. So each individual slat was glued into the that dado that I cut, and then clamped in place. So I did, I did have a little bit of problems with glue run out and stuff. Originally, I was gonna try to screw them together, but I changed my mind. And this is one of those jobs that does take quite a few small clamps to hold everything together while it's drying. So I got that center glued in there like that, you can see, and now you just have the 2 outer pieces to go back and glue in place. And same thing, except for these, I just kind of spread all the glue on them at once, and I had marked those slats. I had put some indexing lines in those slats to line everything up, so it was just a matter of spreading the glue and then sliding that up in place. And once everything's aligned, they're just going back and putting on some clamps to hold it till the glue dries. So there it is, sitting in place, and now just time to clamp it. So I think this took about the longest of anything on the stand just to get these glue ups done. And there you can see it does take quite a few clamps, but it wasn't too bad in the end. Now at Home Depot I had bought a 5-foot piece of black iron pipe to use for this because I wanted something new that wasn't all nicked up and rusty. So I had to cut that in half using the cold cut saw, and then I went back up and I glued up the second rack. In the meantime, you can see I had painted that clamp part and actually screwed it up to the bottom of that arm there. So this is basically what the assemblies are going to look like, and you can see there's a real red amount of light with these lights. Now I needed some plastic for the base to protect everything because there's always water available, and I picked up this saw. I've got some info about it in another video, but that'll be out shortly. But I decided to use that to cut the plastic, and I didn't quite have the blade set deep enough to cut all the way through, and actually I had reversed it backwards so that the blade wouldn't shatter the plastic, and it did cut it pretty good once I got the depth adjusted properly. So it does work good once you turn the blade backwards. This is a real nice saw that I picked up on clearance at Lowe's with a magnesium base. And there you can see how the blade was backwards. Then I put an old plywood fine tooth blade on the table saw backwards to do the other cuts on the plastic, and actually that worked pretty good. There was a little bit of a mess that it made, and here you can see just when you cut that plastic just how soft this Lexan is, and it's basically shatter resistant. You can see you can bend it 90 degrees, no problem, no cracking or anything. But anyhow, when I got that cut done, you can see the zero clearance insert was basically plugged full of the plastic, and then down in the sawdust chute it was just full of pieces of the soft plastic. Then it was time to go back and put a couple radiuses on the corner so you wouldn't have sharp corners on it. And I got that plywood corner jig that I use, and I just use my small DeWalt router with a 1/2 inch bearing piloted bit, and that makes it an easy job to round over the corners. So now I've got everything ready to go, and I decided to just throw a coat of paint on, or a coat of the acrylic finish on this using a brush for now, and like I said, later I'll go back and do a better job with the sprayer. So there they are, coat of finish on them, and time to start putting things together. And got a carriage bolt to fit in there, and I had a nylon washer and a steel washer, and then a couple of knobs I had out in my shop that fit perfect to clamp that rod. And then the pipe just slides in the hole. Some of the finish had dripped down in the hole though, and it really did make it a little bit tougher. I should have scraped that out before pushing it in, but it still did go in there okay. And you can just pull this whole thing apart in a second too. So there they are, putting the pipe in the other one here. And these 30-inch pipes actually give me 24 inches of clearance under the light, which is just perfect, I think. So same thing, a carriage bolt, and then once the pipe's up, the light heads here just kind of slip on there. You can see how the pipe clamps, you just squeeze them to move it up and down, and it's a real easy way to adjust them. And I picked up a couple caps to clean it up a little bit, and then these plastic sheets to put over the bottom to keep water off everything. And actually they are kind of a red light there, and you can see, and they're sized just perfectly for one of the 10 by 20 flats. There you can see. And they do have a tremendous amount of light. They're only 60 watts, but they really do have a nice even spread on the light. So right after New Year's, I'll be starting my lettuce like I do every year, and I'm going to try it using these two lights here just to see if they're any better or worse, or how they work compared to the old ones. Plus I have a couple heating pads I'm going to try to use to see if I can speed up the germination under these lights also. So, basically this is just the start. This is the holders, and hopefully I'll get to test them out good over the next couple of weeks, and see exactly if they are worth buying. So anyhow, so there they are. The very simple to make adjustable stands for them, and they're fairly sturdy, easy to knock down, and they adjust from 0 to 24 inches above the plant. So I think that should work out pretty good. You can see those clamps really did make it easy. I could have done other things, but this seemed to kind of be the easiest thing that I could figure out, and I wasn't using the clamps anyway. And I was actually kind of lucky to find these lights on clearance stuffed away in the back corner of Costco last summer. I got them for $19 each, and they were regularly like almost $50 or $60, I think. So, it was a pretty good deal. So hopefully we'll get to see how they work in the future. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.